Om Sahna Bhavato Sahano Bhunakto Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may He protect us both. May we both enjoy together. May we both exert together. May our studies become brilliant. May we not be disputatious and hate each other. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. So we are at the concluding aspects of the Sthita Prajna. So last time we did some verses, Apuryamanam Achala Pratishtham. Today, and then I think so we did verse 71 also. Vihaya Kamanya Sarvan Pumascharati Nisprihaha Nirmamo Nirahankaraha. So this is the summary of the whole thing, the whole chapter 2. Vihaya Kamanya Sarvan, a person who is moving around without any desires. I keep on telling this. When people are using the term desires, it is not that you can't live with the desires. Many people say, no, desires you need to get destroyed. Desires cannot get destroyed. Everybody has got desires. Even a Mahatma at the highest level, sitting in the pinnacle of meditation in the Himalayas, has a desire to merge with the supreme reality. Even that is a desire. So there is no way anybody can live without a desire. So what we can do, or what is heeded in the Shastras, is we sublimate our desires from selfishness and move towards unselfishness. When I am selfish, I am agitated, supremely stressed out, tensed out. As soon as I become a little bit unselfish, then proportionately I am more happier. So proportionately, I have stopped thinking about myself, even if it is 10%. So that 10% of not thinking about myself is equivalent to 10% of the happiness that I am experiencing through my unselfish activities. So you keep on increasing that, ultimately you reach a state of selflessness. The 100% of unselfishness is selfless. Selfless is where your ego is not claiming anything that you are doing. You shrug your shoulders and say, who are you to do anything? I met a person in he was working in one of the companies. So I said, hello, good morning. He said, good morning. We sat together. And I said, where are you working? He named a very prominent technological company. So this is the company I'm working. Okay. What are you working as? Well, I'm just an employee. Okay, fine. And then after 2 hours, somebody told me, you start sitting with big men now. I said, it's a simple employee. But he is the chairman of the whole company. So the more higher up you go, even people who are at the highest level, they shrug their shoulders. Their value system is so strong. They say, who am I to do anything? Big deal. Some nature has given me something and I'm just passing it. It's just a conduit, that's all. This is selflessness. So the more you reach Vihaya, so when they're talking about desires extinguished, they're saying all the selfish desires gone. Kaman Sarvan, Pumascharati Nispraha. Without getting touched by anything in the world, he is moving around. They are there, maintaining all the relationships chosen by them, whether yes or no, doesn't matter. But they are there. Nothing touches them. Why? Because they have this two beautiful attitude. Nirmamo nirahankara. I don't have anything which is mine. I've come here alone, I'll go alone. There is people on the way, we meet together, we discuss, we talk, we create families, and then we move on. So nothing is mine, and I have no ego. I don't possess anything. I don't possess anything, objects or personalities. This is my husband. This is my wife. This is my mother. So all this minus is what causes the problem. You can say when you're introducing to the other person, this is my husband. There's nothing wrong. But don't give too much importance on this is mine. Because the more you hold on to anything, it will be let go away. It will move off. Right? So vihaya kamanya sarvan pumascharati nirmamo nirahankaraha sashanti madhigacchati. That person reaches the highest level of spiritual evolution. Now we move on to the last verse. Yesham brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuyati sthitva syamanta kalepi brahma nirvana brikshati. This is the state of Brahman. O Partha, the highest state of reality which everybody should aspire for, achieve for. Attaining this, none is deluded. Nobody gets deluded in the sense there are no confusions about it. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do business? Should I do service? Should I have spoken this way or should I have spoken that way? All these confusions completely disappear. Completely disappear. Just get this knowledge. That's all. See, and when we are saying get this knowledge, it is the most important aspect of one's life. You can educate yourself with anything and everything the world has to offer. They will only help you to increase your standard of living, perhaps. But this subject, we cannot do without. This increases one's standard of life. So the whole focus, and when do you reach at the highest level? Even antakale cha api, even at the end of time, you will attain that peace. So it doesn't matter. End of the time is the end of life. When end is going to come, who knows? It really doesn't matter. But even then, the struggle has to be there to reach this state. When you reach this supreme state of realization, which the great masters say is there. So first we have to take faith and learn from our own experiences. What does our own experiences teach us? The more I get away from the world and the so-called responsibilities, more happier I am. Internally, not externally. Imagine what would happen if we reach the highest. Even at that end of life. Antakalecha. So just continue your studies every day and you reach the highest. All it depends is the attitude. So don't be in a hurry of, look, I'm not evolving. I'm not, you will not notice. Nobody will notice your, in fact, nobody is supposed to notice also. It's not a race. Our attitude should be physically, emotionally, and intellectually, I am better than what I was yesterday, perhaps last year. Never entertain a thought that I have become old. Never. Age is just a number. And you have to believe it. This is not just a quotation. You have to believe it. And keep on moving towards the higher. Like the quotation which was there today. A man asking a girl, how were you so proficient in skating? And she said, it's very easy. Every time I fell down, I got up. That's it. Any time I go through a so-called failure, I get up and try it again. a different approach. Somewhere I will succeed, but the race is never whether I'll succeed or not. The race is whether I am happy towards this journey. See, that attitudinal difference is what creates magic. One lady was constantly complaining to her friend, you know, my husband is like this, my mother-in-law is like this, and my children are like this, and they don't respect me, and blah, 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 blah. I wish God takes away my life. Really, I'm so sad. I'm so sick about everything. I'm just sick, mentally sick. She kept on repeating that. And she developed cough. So when she developed cough, she went to a doctor. It was not COVID times, by the way, so no fear, just simple cough. And she went to a doctor, and the doctor looked at the report and said, Acha, you come after 3 days. After 3 days, the lady came and says, coughing is getting more. It's really tired. Nobody's there to even give me medicines at home. What is the use of all my duties and responsibilities? Then duties and responsibilities. So the doctor looked at the thing and said that, I am sorry to state this, but you have got cancer. The lady is shocked. She is just 35, 36. She says, no, it can't be. I'm too young to get all this. Said, no, it's cancer. I said, okay, what stage it is? Oh, this is the last stage, fourth stage. You can't do anything. So seriously, yeah, it's written here. I can show it. The lady somehow totters out of the dispensary, and she's completely dejected and disappointed. The doctor says, I'll give you some medicines, at least, and by next week itself, you can start the chemo and all. But still, and then the lady says, how much time do I have, doctor? He said, maximum of 1.5 to 2 months. The lady is completely finished off. Somehow she's tottering outside. The ward boy comes, and the ward boy comes and says, excuse me, the doctor has called you urgently. Please come now, urgently. And the lady went there back again and says, so what is it? Should I get admitted now? The doctor said, I am so sorry about this. There was a mix-up in the administrative department. You don't have cancer. They have brought somebody else's file. And the other people are fighting. You brought the file. You brought the file. It was your problem. It was your problem. Everybody's fighting. And the doctor is accusing the administrative department. This lady is sitting like this and then says, are you telling me I don't have cancer? She said, yes. So I'm not going to die after 1 month. No chance. You're not going to die. You're only just simple cough. You take the medicine, you'll be all right. The lady jumps and goes out. So happy of what? Getting her health back, which never went. She comes home, she hugs her husband, she hugs her children. Everybody, she's all love manifested. All love manifested. What about all the problems she had when she said, oh God, take me away, God, take me away, take me. Everything disappeared. Nature, according to her, gave her a second chance. Does nature has to give us this kind of a jolt to make us realize what life is all about? That's the secret. The secret of understanding between a spiritual person and a so-called worldly person. So when we use the term worldly person, the person of the world thinks, oh my God, these guys are always bifurcating between spiritual people and worldly people. Worldly people, spiritual people, the difference is the same. Attitude. The worldly person thinks all the things around them are permanent and there won't be any change. And when that change happens, they get agitated. A spiritual person sees it in a different light. He sees it from the point of view of anything can happen right now. Therefore, live life to the fullest. Under no circumstances, every responsibility of mine is there important. I have to teach, I have to be a good husband, I have to be a good wife, I have to be a good son, I have to be a good daughter, everything, parent, father, mother, all your responsibilities and duties, please continue doing what you're doing diligently. But right at the top, the most important factor, the primeval activity should be, under no circumstances will I ever get agitated. I am going to be peaceful no matter what. I may show a behavior of agitation outside, but internally I am completely peaceful. That attitude is what is said antakale. Even at the end time, you get this, your life is made. Whatever balance is there in your life, whatever life you're leading, even if it is 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, it will become quality and the difference will be amazing. It's like people walking all over with 50 kgs of stone on their head, shoulders droop, walking like this, like this, like this, completely sick and tired of everything. There is no lines. There is no laughter lines in the eyes. Even when people are smiling, they're like a dead cat. The smile should reach the eyes. It's a soul. This is the window. This is window to your soul. It should have light. It should not go away. So that attitude is what he's saying. Once you reach that, you have reached the state of Brahman. All you have to do, nothing is mine, and no arrogation that I have done so many things. That's all. And let the other person live. So when you reach this state, attitudinal change, life changes. And by this verse, we have completed Sthita Prajna. From verse 54 to 72. It would do good to you if you chant this every day and try to study its meaning, because this is what goal should be for everybody, to reach the highest, to merge this finite personality mentally into that infinite self, to remove the disempowering thoughts of, I can do only this, I got my limitation, what to do, we are human beings, dukh aur sukh saath saath mein hai. All these thoughts to be got away, and it should be replaced with other thoughts, which are, I am that powerful supreme reality. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am Shiva. I am the destroyer. I am the creator of my world. I can destroy my world like that, whatever I've created, and I will maintain it. Big deal. So there are no problems in my life, and if the problem comes, I know how to solve it. Now we do the last concept where we chant after every time when the chapter is over. Om Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Dvitiyo Dhyayah. Second chapter of the verse. Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sankhya Yoyo Nama Dvitiyoda. So the Sankhya Yoga chapter is over. It ends. What it means? Om Tat Sat. That is real. That supreme reality which is considered to be the fourth state is real. Rest is all unreal. All. Since all is unreal, I am never completely involved with the unreal, because one facet of the unreal is they are anitya, temporary by nature, they keep on changing. So whatever objects and beings around me are temporary by nature. My physical body is temporary by nature. My mind, which keeps on changing, now I want this, after 5 years I want that, keeps on changing, that's temporary by nature. And my intellect and my understanding of the world as well as my own personality changes dramatically every time until I reach the highest. even that is temporary by nature. So that which is the witness of all these changes is the permanent. That is real. Hmm? That is real. Thus, in the Upanishads of the Bhagavad Gita is also referred to as the Upanishad. Upanishad is the last portion of the Vedas. So the Vedas are bifurcated into 4 parts. The first part is called the Brahmanas, then Mantras, then Aranyakas, and last part is called the Upanishads. Upanishads, since they are the last portion of the Vedas, they are also called Vedanta, which is the end portion of the Vedas. So Upanishads and Vedanta is one at the same. Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be a highest revered text. Why? Because it teaches you the highest philosophy. No other text teaches you to that level. Upanishad, the meaning of Upa, Ni and Shad. Upa means near, Ni means be, low, Shad means sit. Upa means near. Near refers to the affinity which you have towards the teacher, whoever the teacher is. The nearness is from within. I feel near to the teacher. I can understand what he or she is trying to imply or say, and I will see to it that I try to live that life to reach a state which these teachers indicate. This is the nearness. Nearness doesn't mean physically coming so close that you suffocate the person. Every time, apply the DAG. We call it DAG. DAG, you know, do you know the meaning of DAG? D-A-G, DAG. Dial a guru. Call a Guruji, mera ye problem hai, what should I do? This is called DAG, dial a guru. Not for that. You ask questions pertaining to the subject and all the questions will be answered. So that nearness you have to feel to the guru when you are sitting with a pen and paper and studying. And when the teacher is talking about a particular shloka, a particular line, and you mentally look and say, this is what exactly I had in my mind. The sync between you and the teacher needs to be there. So when the teacher is trying to imply something, you have to be there. Your mind cannot wander everywhere. Then you are not a student. Okay. So that sync is upa. Ni, below. Actually, it is below. But when you say below, people think, acha, acha, then the teacher wants to sit on top and below students should sit. Be low. You make a B, E and hyphen LOW. Be low mentally. Mentally have an attitude of devotion towards the subject. Since the subject is given by the teacher who seems to be qualified enough, devotion to the teacher also. But here be careful, you should not be devoted to the teacher so much that when the teacher talks anything diverse to the subject, you take that also. Because it has come from the Shri Mukh, from that mouth, I will take it. No. Is it good for my evolution? If the answer is yes, I will take it. King Bali was there and he, in the Keralites celebrate Olam, he is the king there. And he was an Asura. So he was giving gifts to everybody when there was one particular day. And all the Brahmins came and they asked for something or the other, and he just gave it. Brahmins means anybody who needs it. He just gave it. What do you want? A little bit of gold? He gave it gold. What do you want? Silver? So one small young Brahmin comes. Vishnu in the form of Vamana Avatar. He comes there and he says, what can you give me? Bali says, whatever you want, sir. My kingdom is open. You just name it. What will I do with all the jewelries and gold and this and that? I don't need it. After all, I am a simple sannyasi. I need just a little paces of land to sleep. That's all. So in your kingdom, just give me 3 paces of land. So that's it, 3 paces. So you'll walk 3 paces and that's it. Well, that's it. That much land is enough. I live there. Sir, ask more. I will give you half of my kingdom. Don't worry. No, I don't want that. I want only 3 pieces of land. And he says, okay. And he's supposed to put the hand like this and put the water in the palm and give it. This is the promise that I am giving it. So he takes that jug, which has got a nose like this, and his guru, Shukracharya, that person says that, listen, this Brahmin doesn't seem to be a normal guy. He seems to be Lord Vishnu. So don't give any promise. He said, I already given. I told him I'll give. But in the Granthas, he says, explains the teacher, in the Granthas, it is said that if any promise you make and it comes on your life, then you can withdraw the promise. Bali says, no way. I'm not going. Even if I die, doesn't matter. I'll never withdraw because what I said is what I've said. And then he tries to put the water. So Shukracharya, what he does is, the story is, it's in the comic books you see this. He becomes a fly and goes on and sits in the snout of that pot so that the water does not flow. So this Brahmin, Vamana Avatar, small midget, he takes a blade of grass and pokes it in. And one of his eye gets pierced. And he comes out with one eye bleeding. Refers to 2 eyes means I'm still in opposites. Dvandvas, day and night, tall and short, fat and thin, dark skin, white skin. You know, all these are dvandvas. When you prick that eye, it means only one vision is there. Everybody is one from my side. That is exactly the representation of Ganpati's one tusk not being there. Even when the teacher is standing in your way, you need to make. So don't associate to the personality so much as to the knowledge. This is need. You should have devotion towards the higher. Shad, to sit. In this class, all of you, I'm so happy, are sitting and nicely listening to the lectures. I know you. Now you are all quality students, so you are not running around doing every other work. Nobody's walking down with the phone in the hand and trying to listen to the lecture. You are all gem of students, so you are nicely sitting with pen and paper and trying to imbibe this knowledge in whatever way you can without your mind going anywhere else. I know this. This is the quality of students we are talking to. This is to sit. Let the mind rest and come to its own center of gravitation. It should not. So even when you are sitting, the mind is running everywhere. You're looking outside the window, you're looking here, you're looking there. That doesn't work. So when you use the term Upanishad, therefore it is considered to be a terse text. Why it is terse? Because the student's qualification is this. He feels near to the teacher, to the knowledge. He has this devotion towards the higher. I will reach that, come what may. When people of lesser aspects with lesser capabilities have reached that state, Swami Ram Tirtha says, a person like Rama, he calls himself Rama, is the person like Rama has reached this state, then what to talk of intelligent people like you? All we have to do, apply it consistently. That's all. The same principles should go. So in this Upanishad, all is well. Sankhya Yoga is over. Now I will address some questions. So first we'll do the first verse of chapter 2. Why we do this is to indicate to us ourselves that, listen, though we have studied, it is not over yet. In fact, I have just begun my studies. So we are going to chant chapter 2, verse 1. Sanjaya Uvacha Tam Tatha Krupayavishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidhantamidam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudanaha So whenever we are completing a chapter, usually when we are doing it in a sequence, then we go to the first verse of that chapter to tell ourselves, thank God, my study has begun. I got a pilot light now, a little bit of verses I've understood. Now I can start my study seriously. Sanjaya said, I'm just reading it, okay? To him who was thus overcome with pity, whose eyes were filled with tears, who was despondent, upset, and agitated, Madhusudana spoke these words. So that is the end of chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. Now, I have received certain questions after Ramayana. We did the Ramayana last time. And the episode of Agni Pariksha was cleared. I don't think anybody has a problem there. And Rama and Sita went to Ayodhya. Then I received a question saying that, sir, what about that Dhobi, the washerman, he shouted at his woman. This is the one episode which is there in Uttarakhand. They have written it, where it is said that Rama and Sita were living happily in Ayodhya. And one day, Rama overheard a Dhobi. Dhobi means a washerman, talking to his wife who went out of his house, stayed with another man. And when that other man left her, she came back to the husband. So they heard the husband addressing the lady, saying that, listen, you don't need to come to me. I am not like Rama, who can take the woman when she is staying somewhere else. This is the connotation. And Rama, this is the story what's going on. So I'm just explaining that, okay? Rama heard that. He got very agitated. So he told Lakshmana, you do one thing. Your Bhabi, Sita, is pregnant. You take her to a particular forest. There is an ashram in between the forest, Valmiki forest. You take her there and keep her. And simply come back. And after that, Rama never interacted with Sita. Never. He just left her there. So the allegation on Rama is, how can any man do this? When your wife is pregnant, when she is already given Agni Pariksha, indicating that she is pure, and the would-be child, there cannot be any other father but Rama. Yet, how can he just listen to a washerwoman or a washerman? This is the story allegation going on. Now, truth be told, this is from the Uttarakanda. This is the 7th part of Ramayana. Many people question whether it is also written by Valmiki. Some people say Valmiki, some people, it looks like an appendix, added benefit to the real Ramayana. Somebody's added it. I don't know whether Valmiki is added it, but somebody's added it. And there are a lot of distortions in that. Lots of distortions. Because Ramayana is a subject everybody's talking. Plus you have the TV serials, especially the TV serial. They finish off all the pious aspect of the story. So, first of all, the real thing is Rama, there was no washerman and washerwoman and all. When they came to Ayodhya, you have to understand Rama was a king. 13 years, Sita stayed in exile. And in that exile, in that serenity, in that beauty of solitude, being alone, she was so happy that when she came back to the city, she did not like it. Now, this is my opinion. It is not a Dharma Grantha, but I have learned this much from Vedanta, is our Shastras is open to million interpretations. The Bhagavad Gita as well as the Ramayana. And in all these interpretations, I should choose that which helps me grow as a human being. I will not choose what others are saying. I'm not going to think about what ABCD has said about it in their books. No, I'm going to use my head, and the simple thing is, Valmiki has written it or some great sage has written it, it will not be so base and debase. It cannot be. It has to have a higher purpose. Now this, according to me, is the higher purpose. When they came to Ayodhya back, Sita literally was a realized person. Role reversal. There, Maryada Purushottam Ram before reaching Ayodhya, and Sita was the matter. Now, Sita is reaching a higher state. Rama is just the king. So the role of Rama now is he is only the king. He is only thinking from the point of view of what Praja is going to talk about him in hindsight. But Sita, even in Ayodhya, when they were invited to various breakfast, lunch and dinner, all these things happen everywhere. She was just tired of the whole thing and she was missing that ashram life. She was reaching a different state. You have to understand that. When that happened, and she was constantly telling Rama that let us go to Valmiki's ashram, let us go to Valmiki's ashram. And he said, no, no, see, I've got duties to do. We have got duties to do. She said, at least let me go. You do your duty. You do your duty. Let me go. And Rama says, okay, you go tomorrow. Next day, she was supposed to be sent to the Valmiki ashram in the jungle. And that night, there was no dhobi, nothing. Rama heard this gossip from somewhere that these are the things that are talked about. There is no reference to who said it, what said it and all. At that time, the kings, even the religious leaders' attitude was, if one person from the whole subject is not happy with his rule, then they would be very unsettled. Not like our politicians nowadays. Now the whole way, let the whole country come up and say that person is corrupt, we don't have anything. The person will continue. That time it was not like that. So even one person saying, I am not this, that doubt was created in Rama. I told you now, there is a role reversal. The strength of Sita is to be focused here. Night, he tells Lakshmana, take Bhabi to Valmiki ashram. Keep her there and come. She is pregnant. She was supposed to go there for probably a week or two max. He tells Lakshmana, we are just dropping her and coming back. Then Lakshmana says, then when do I go to pick her back? He said, no, you don't go. It's okay. We don't. We'll continue to live as it is. Lakshmana was completely shocked. But his brother's orders, he got angry with Rama also, but then he continued. He took Sita, pregnant, to the jungle, kept her in Valmiki's ashram, and came back. This lady stayed there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, 2 months, 6 months. Can you imagine a state where a husband is doubting the wife for being pregnant with somebody else's child? See the psychology. And he sends her away to the mother's place, so to say, and doesn't call back. What will happen to you? And here, thousands of years back, was a role written by Sita. She never called Rama back. Never once in all her state, she sent a message to Ram from the ashram saying that, why did you dump me? Why did you do this? You still don't believe me, no? I've been so honest with our relationship. How much struggle I've done, how much responsibilities I've adhered to. No questions at all. This is the strength of that moment. Whoever you think this is it, so be it. I don't want to go back. And I'm happy here. I'm happy to say majority of the ladies now are of this kind. I'm very happy to say that. I'm happy here with or without you. I am happy with you, but never for a moment think that my happiness is dependent on you. That's it. She's there. She's living happily. She gives birth to twins, Love and Kush, anointed by Valmiki. Shatrughan, the younger brother, comes there, visits. He gives them gifts and everything is done. She never once asked, does Rama miss me? No. Ultimately, when the children grow and they start singing what Rama did, how Rama was a great king and he killed Ravana and all that thing. Shatrughan hears both these children and sends and takes them to Ayodhya. In Ayodhya, Ram, Lakshman, everybody is sitting there and these two princes are singing, young boys. And when they are singing, Rama understands and looks at them without a DNA paternal advice. He understands that these two must be my children. That tejas, that glow is there. Ultimately, he traces them back to the Valmiki village. He sees Sita. He sees the two children. And he knows posterity. He is not married. He is not married anybody else. His devotion is that he is not married anybody else. So Sita hands over both the children to Rama. Yet, face to face, she never asks Rama, why did you do this? Ultimately, she has realized it really doesn't matter. This was my job, brought up the children beautifully. They can go to Ayodhya and live their life. She gives up and goes back into Prithvi. So many people say she died in a very derogatory way. No, Prithvi was her mother. That is the way she was born. That is the way she was born. When she was born, she was found. Janaka was not the biological father. She was found on earth. And the same thing, she goes back to her mother, indicating again from my point of view and Vedata's point of view, the hero of Uttarakhand, the seventh portion is Sita. She is the main character. And accessory is Ram. Sita merges, her finite personality merges with the infinite. No more dependency on the world. Now, from this character of Sita, understand the strength of that lady and understand the duty bound aspect of Rama, where he sent his beloved away, knowing fully well. It's not that I don't love Sita anyway. If Sita goes, there are other people. No, that thought was not there. Whole life he didn't get married after that. The whole praja, when I'm taking care of it, they can't lift a finger and say, I did something wrong, even by mistake. So he was doing his dharma, but Sita had reached a higher portion. Now, this kind of an interpretation, right or wrong, I have no clue. Seriously, I have no clue. There are other Pandits who can talk about it. From my point of view, a lady's strength should be this, where she is not cowed down by situations, cowed down by husband and wife and in-laws and say that what to do, this is what they are making me do. It's the most irritating tone. Learn from Sita. I am not needed, off I go. Doesn't matter. If you don't need me, somebody else will. That power is what Ramayana brings. So before Ayodhya, they come, all the fight over the strength of Rama, and then after Ayodhya, the whole episode, the strength of this lady Sita. If we can take these both great qualities and imbibe them in our life. Sita never questioned Rama, Rama never, it's okay, doesn't matter. He is doing his duty, I am doing my duty, that's it. There won't be a single agitation in anyone. That's the beauty of Ramayana. You can interpret it any way you can. But understand one thing should be the bottom line. This is written at that time by great sages and saints. And if it doesn't match their level of intensity, their level of evolution, then don't follow it. Then don't follow it. Rama sent Sita away, and he was so bad. He heard the dobi. A king like Rama cannot do that. Simple. But Sita was crying in the ashram. She was so agitated. Sita cannot do that. That is not Sita. Then somebody else has put all these stories, made a masala out of it. Learn to study the Bhagavad Gita. Learn to see the Mahabharata and the Ramayana in its own glory. Life would become beautiful. Thank you very much. Om. 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 Hari Om.